Welcome, my friend. How are you doing? I'm your host, Conny Graf. Thank you so much for allowing me back into your ears. And I really mean it. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate it. I just recently heard a statistic that most podcasts don't make it past the 1 year mark. And I can totally see it. It's a lot of work and commitment for sure. And it's kind of lonely work too. It's my passion project, so I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. But you can really help me keep me motivated by subscribing and following my podcast if you haven't done so yet. And if you love my podcast, a rating, hopefully a 5-star rating, and a review would really help too. I just got recently a review that made my day. Infinite Evans says, valuable conversations and topics. Great podcast with great conversations and topics. Well, thank you so much, Infinite Evans. I really like that you took the time and gave me a rating and a review. And I really hope you specifically, Evans, enjoy this conversation that I'm going to have today. Because today I welcome Teri Leigh. We connected on Podmatch, the best place to find awesome guests in my opinion. So Teri is a mindfulness coach and she says she brings the colors back into our life. She makes yoga, meditation, mindfulness and shamanism easy and accessible and most of all sensical to the average everyday modern human being. She says the average Jane and Joe who need mindfulness aren't going to get it because it doesn't make sense in their daily lives and they don't have the time or focus to do pretzel positions or sit there tush to the cush for 30 minutes at a time. That's why she created the MOZI method, a series of 7 body, mind, breath exercises that each take 30 seconds or less and can be practiced everywhere and anytime to reset our nervous system, balance our chakras, and shift our energy in the moment that issues arise, while also having long-term lasting effects. So Teri and we talk about the best way she knows how to declutter our mind, and she says that's through breathing, how major life transitions are an upgrade to our chakra system, and what she means by that, and why we should care. She also shares with us why she became an elder at age 36, and we talk about her journey of downsizing so she could manage less. She did that after she became an elder, and her relationship to finances and material stuff changed. So, without further ado, let's jump into this awesome conversation with Teri Leigh. Welcome, Teri. I'm very excited to have you as a guest on my podcast. How are you today?
Thank you, Connie. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a beautiful day here in Minnesota, so I'm very happy.
Yeah, it's beautiful here too. It definitely smells and feels like fall, not like summer anymore. So sniff, sniff, because summer is my favorite favorite season, but fall is nice too. So you just said you are in Minnesota because usually I say, tell my audience where you live. So you did that already. So the second question I always ask is tell us one thing about you that has nothing to do with what we're talking about and that might surprise people.
Well, right now, significantly in my life is a friend of my husband's from high school has moved in with us as we are taking care of him in bone marrow transplant.
Ooh.
So I am a primary caregiver right now. And that has nothing to do with my work, but it has everything to do with my work at the same time.
Yeah, and I could imagine that takes up basically your life right now, right?
In some ways, yes. It's a lot of hurry up and wait at doctor's appointments. And it's also COVID-like quarantine. So I've been living at home without getting much in the outside world for the last 50 days, and he has 50 days left.
Oh gosh, yeah. Okay, because of his immune system is weakened because of the bone marrow transplant. Makes sense, but that must be hard.
It's beautiful to help someone heal.
Yeah.
It is hard, but it's a beautiful process to help someone heal.
Yeah, I imagine. And you know what? I can actually make connections to what we're talking about after with this situation, but the audience may not yet. So,
right.
Yeah. So I was just mentioning before, people can't see it now because you blurred your background, but you have this beautiful chakra painting behind you. And I read somewhere, I think it was on your website, or no, it was somebody else who had you on as a guest on her podcast. And she mentioned and said that you have a different perspective on the chakra system. And I actually want to start with that because
Okay.
I think that that will lead us where I want to go with this. So, how is your perspective different on the chakra system than what most people, if they even know what the chakra system is, what most people think?
Well, most people describe the chakras as these esoteric, metaphysical energy balls that live in your system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all kind of psychic, woo-woo, intuitive, la la land type stuff. And I really look at it as a much more practical and grounded perspective. I see the chakra system as our nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a central nervous system is your brain and your spinal cord and all the nerves that branch out from your spinal cord. And that part of your body, that part of your system and how we function is all about all of your history. So every memory you've ever had in your whole life, everything you've ever done is coded in that filing cabinet of your nervous system, as well as the DNA of all of your ancestors is coded within your nervous system. And so your nervous system is constantly drawing upon all of that information from your past and your ancestral past. That's what your nervous system is generally, and then helping you to determine in your body how to react to things as stimuli come into your life.
Mm-hmm.
The way I see the chakras is every time a nerve crosses another nerve, there's an intersection of nerves, there's a chakra.
Mm-hmm.
And a chakra is where the messages between this nerve and that nerve can intersect and communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are 72 million chakras in your body system. Well, there's 72 million intersections of nerves to nerves.
Mm-hmm.
The places where there are the bigger intersections of nerves, there's 7 of them along your brain and spinal cord. And those are the 7 major chakras that our body manages.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is the tiniest leap I make from the practical of this is our physical body and our nervous system into somewhat esoteric, but not really. If you look at where those 7 intersections are, symbolically, what they govern in your life is what that body part is about.
Mm-hmm.
What nerves branch out from that intersection. So I won't go through all 7, but a very general description is, let's go with the sacral chakra, which lives in your hips and pelvis, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in your hips and pelvis is this bundle of nerve intersections, the sacral chakra, the svadhisthana. And inside your sacral or your hips and pelvis lives your reproductive system, your excretory system, your pee, your poop, all that stuff. All that stuff is about holding on and letting go.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, everything in that hip part of your body is to hold on to something until it's time to let it go. Well, that's what those nerves are telling your body to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just your body, but it's your mood, it's your emotions, it's all the things you're dealing with. So when we have issues in our lives about hoarding or holding on or not being able to let go or too much control or not enough control, all of that manifests around the sacral chakra.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we can analyze all of the 7 major chakras and many of the not so major chakras by where they live in the body and what the purpose of that body part is, because that's what those nerves are processing on a very symbolic level. So it's a very different perspective, but it's also very practical.
Well, so I'm wondering, and I'm no expert on it at all, but I'm wondering whether yes, it is different, but maybe it's more progressive, because I'm thinking science is getting there too. Like you said before, that chakras were this woo-woo thing. And I think they were pushed into the woo-woo corner because it wasn't scientifically proven yet, but science came so far in these last few years, or a bit more than a few years, because it's not common knowledge what science all does, right? So I'm thinking like and so I come from the perspective, and I'm, as I said, I'm no expert, but I always say, like, Earth, nature doesn't make any mistakes. So we do have those. They know it's
Yeah,
scientifically proven now we have these chakras, so nature doesn't make a mistake. So they're good for something. So, and I love
right.
that you picked the sacral chakra, because that is the one, like you just said, that talks about holding on and letting go. Well, to me, everything is connected. So if you have a lot of clutter in your life, you're most likely,
Yeah,
most likely, and actually, again, didn't test that scientifically. It's just a little bit of a experience since I'm helping people with clutter. You might have also digestive issues. You might be constipated, because your whole being is about holding on instead of letting go at the right time. And this is what I'm always
hmm,
talking about, decluttering too. I'm always saying, like, it's not about just getting rid of everything, becoming a minimalist. It's about figuring out which things have served their time in your life and need to be let go, so that you can
yes.
move forward in your life and do the things that you want to do now. So that's why I love how this is why I wanted to go into the chakras, because I kind of had an inkling that you could go there.
Yes.
So,
Let me give you a story from my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, as a
mhm,
perfect example of what you just mentioned. My maternal grandmother died in 2007. And
mhm,
prior to 2007, her husband died several years before that. My grandpa died many years before that. And in the time that she was an old widow living alone in her house, all of her friends started dying too, because she
mhm,
was an old woman. She was in her late 80s when she died. She was older. And every person who died, she took their stuff.
mhm,
Physically, she took their stuff into her home. So
mhm,
over those years, her home got more and more cluttered. She became a hoarder,
mhm,
and not a hoarder in the sense of everything being dirty and ugly and
mhm,
trash. She had high quality stuff, and she had it all organized really well. It was beautiful stuff. It was just packed to the gills in her house.
mhm.
At the same time, my grandmother was also raised in a time when women were told, you are quiet. You do as your
Mhm.
husband tells you.
Yeah,
She didn't have bank accounts. When her husband died, her name was not on anything.
yeah.
She had to go get all that in her name, but she kept all of her thoughts to herself.
Mhm.
She kept all of her opinions to herself. She stuffed a lot of emotions. She just did what everyone else, she was the hostess with the mostest, making everyone else feel good, but she didn't
Yeah,
ever express any of her internal tough feelings.
yeah.
So much to the so that when she died, we found a copy of Emily Post's manners books, like all those rules of etiquette,
Mhm, mhm.
so marked up that we realized that's how she was living her life,
Yeah,
totally controlled. And her house became a hoarding house. And over those years, she had more and more issues with her bowels.
yeah. It makes total
She
sense to me.
died on Christmas Day cooking Christmas dinner
Mm.
of a bowel obstruction. So literally, she was she died of holding on to her shit.
Yeah,
And not just her shit, but everyone else's shit, because she
yeah,
just absorbed all the pains of everybody else.
yeah,
She never talked about them. She just let them talk to her.
yeah, yeah.
And she held it all, as a good housewife mother did in her age and stage.
It's so painful to think of that, because again, nature created this circle where things come in our body too. You can just see it. It comes in, we eat it, and the body uses the nutrients, and then you have to let go of what the body can't use. And if everything works right, you have a bowel movement a day. That's kind of like how things work. And yeah, and holding on in your body to all this makes you very, very sick.
Right, right. So decluttering, not just the stuff in your world, but if you have a lot of material, physical stuff, it's a
Yeah.
symbol, it's metaphoric of the emotional stuff you're holding on into in your hormones and in your moods.
Yeah.
And that will manifest also in your body.
Yeah.
Science makes no mistake. You say you want this, and it's just going to manifest
Yeah.
everywhere.
Exactly. Well, as within, so without, right?
Exactly.
As
Exactly.
within, so without. And so this is also where, if you notice you have you're constipated, you can't go to the bathroom, it often helps to see in your house and so that's what I'm sometimes say, like, go see in your house where is something that you're actually hoarding. And I don't actually like the word hoarding, because most people are not hoarders. Most people are just
Right.
keeping stuff because they're not letting it go. Go and see where is stuff that you need to let go, and start on the outside. If it's too hard
Right.
on the inside, sometimes for some people it's too hard on the outside, then they have to start on the inside. But yeah, it's all
Right.
connected. It's really all connected.
And you can address it from any one of those ways, or why not address it from all of them?
Yeah,
So you
yeah,
go get rid of the physical stuff as you physically do something to help your body get rid of stuff,
yes,
which is take a shower, wash it off,
yeah.
shake it off, shake
Well,
it out.
that's
Physically
definitely,
shaking it off will make a big, huge difference. And then you have to figure out how to let it go out of your mind too.
yeah,
And that comes with whether it's therapy or whether you write it down and you burn it or
mm,
you
yeah,
get it out of your system. That was the problem with my grandmother. She never, ever shared it. She never got it out of
yeah,
her
yeah.
because she was told not to.
And she probably didn't shake herself either, because the shaking part, that reminds me of something. I saw an animal documentary somewhere. And so when an animal, like a prey animal, gets attacked but gets away because maybe it is able to hide, or it's able to pretend to be dead, and then the predator is not interested anymore, and the danger goes away. What they noticed in the animal world is that the animals get up and then they start shaking themselves. And
Yep.
actually science looked into it, and they said that's actually where they get this fright, flight, and freeze response out of their body. And
Exactly.
because they can't talk to anybody, they shake. And they said too that for us, it's really good to, like, if we experience something that startled us or something, that we maybe shake our body afterwards.
Yes.
So that's one thing that came to my mind. Yeah, do you want to say something? Sorry.
Yes. Because I learned that from my dog, who every
Yeah.
time she gets into a situation that she's a little stressed, she does one of two things. She yawns or she shakes.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
shake is a bigger version of the yawn.
Yeah.
And the yawn she can do in the moment when she's still in the stress, but the shake she can do when it's over. And I must have read very similar research that you were talking
Yeah.
about in the science, because what the system I teach my clients, I call the MOZI method. And the
Mm-hmm.
MOZI method is a body action linked to a mindful intention or a very simple affirmation linked to a very specific breath. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a three-part approach to dealing with changing our chakras, changing our nervous system
Mm-hmm.
from one state into a different state,
Mm-hmm.
whatever state we're in. It's an adjusting, getting out of that nervous response into the calm response, or even the other way around if you need to be more waken up and
Mm-hmm.
alert. And so the MOZI method for the sacral chakra, which would be holding on and letting go, is literally shaking your body. Or if you can't shake your whole body because you're in public and that would be weird, you just shake your hand or
Yeah.
you open your hand
Yeah.
while you're doing a deep focus breath, which is a breath work technique that I teach on my programming, while you say a very specific fine-tuned affirmation to what it is you need to let go in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to be careful to phrase that affirmation in the right way, because if you say, I let go of blank, you're reaffirming that thing in your brain.
I can totally see that. Yeah.
So you're holding on to it more because you're saying it again, and you're saying
Yeah.
you're activating it again. So you have to find what it is you want to
Focus on, right?
receive as a result of the releasing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because you can't really bring new things into your life unless you let go of
Yeah.
something that's taking
Well,
up that space.
some people can, but then that's where the house fills, where the body fills, where the mind fills, you know. I want to say, so the one with the shaking too, I just remembered when you said about shaking the hand. I'm originally from Switzerland, and I know like our reaction, for example, in Switzerland, I don't know whether I haven't paid attention whether it's the same here. So when we just experienced maybe some little bit, doesn't have to be danger, but it could just be a little bit of a higher energy situation, we often say, "Oh my God," and shake our hand. "Oh my God, that was wild," you know, and we do this automatically. So I haven't paid attention whether they do this here too, but in Switzerland that's very common. You shake your hands or both hands, even, "Oh my God," you know, like this. And that's probably because we intrinsically know that this helps to get rid of it. And the other thing I wanted to say, because you mentioned that your grandma lived by that book, which I forgot what it was called, but by all these rules. And that would have probably been very inappropriate to shake ourselves or even shake the hand. And also the yawning. So all the things that actually would help her or us in general with a situation like this are in our society front or not proper, right? Or at least according to certain books, which I know now it starts a bit to change. We loosen up a bit, luckily, but
you're right. It is so intrinsic and indigenous in our mindset. Somewhere in our ancestry, our ancestors knew to do this stuff. And it's still in there. It's still in our nerves and our DNA to know to do this stuff. And it shows up everywhere. I mean, I watch TV and I can see examples of people shaking it off in TV all the time.
Yeah, we even say that, right? In our language, we even say that when something happens and we want to move on from it. Oh, I have to shake this off. I have to shake. We even say it, right?
So we use the language,
yeah,
but we don't necessarily physically do the shake.
Yeah, exactly.
However, a great example in the early seasons of Grey's Anatomy, when Christina, the two main characters, Christina and Meredith, would have a bad day, they would say, "Let's dance it out."
Yeah.
And they would blare the music and they would just dance. And that's how they would let go of their day or whatever it is that they were stressed about.
Yeah.
By moving and that's why so many people say physical exercise.
Yeah.
If you get stuck in your head, go for a walk. Well, that movement will shake things out, shake it off, get rid of whatever's getting stuck, because movement does that.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to, before we move on, because I have I can see so many ways we can go, but I want to go to one more thing real quick about the chakras, because on your website I read, and I'm very curious about that. On your website I read major life transitions, which for example is when your friends die, when your husband die, when anything like that, are an upgrade to your chakra system. And I wanted to know why that is an upgrade. So this is my curiosity, and I just hope my listeners are interested in that too. But
if our chakra system, our nervous system, is our electrical wiring within our bodies, right? Very much like the motherboard and the electrical wiring of a computer system. And when we overload it, when there's too much going on, just like in our computer, when you've installed way too many applications, you've got way too many things going, and you've got to upgrade the computer, you've got to upgrade the software to be able to handle all the things you're doing. That's an upgrade. Same thing happens with the chakra system. When you go through a major life change, that's a major overwhelm of nervous system responses. And your chakra system, then your nervous system, has to reboot itself. And that's why you go through, whether it's a grief of a loss or moving your home or changing your career or changing your job or even having a baby, any major life event is going to have many new stimuli and systems that have to go through your nervous system, that has to go through this. So you need to upgrade. But in that process of upgrade, everything kind of has to shake up for a bit. Just like when you install new software on your computer system, you have to install it, and then the computer shuts down, and then it restarts itself. And when it restarts itself, it takes a while to implement everything, and then it takes you a while to figure out how to use everything. The same thing happens with your chakra system.
Yeah. Okay. So now I understand, because in my experience, people also often start accumulating clutter, let's say like that, when they are, or just after a major life transition, because they are not willing to go with what life presents. They're clinging on their old life, like, and I even say sometimes it doesn't always have to be something from the outside imposed on you. It could be even something you chose, like a new job or a new like you move
Or a
somewhere or a
baby.
child, or so these are things that you chose, but then all of a sudden you have a hard time adjusting to the new life. So then you cling on to the old life. And that's probably also then where the chakra system gets a bit clogged up, because you're not properly, I don't want to say properly. Maybe you don't know yet how to deal with it and with the upgrade that you just said. Yeah.
Right.
So I was wondering whether you go into that direction.
Like adding all these applications to your computer. When you don't upgrade, then the computer gets sluggish and it doesn't work as well. Same thing happens when we have these major life issues and you don't upgrade, you don't take a new perspective, you don't take this new normal and change your world and your inner world as much as your outer world, your whole world will get sluggish.
Yeah.
And so your chakras, you need to readjust how your nervous system functions anytime you have a major life event.
Yeah. And see, I love this conversation we're having, Teri, because this is exactly when I always say there's so much more to clutter than you think. And then I'm talking about, like I talked before about our digestive system and how when you can't go to the bathroom, then look on your outside or look in your inside, in your emotions and in your thoughts, because everything is connected. And people are sometimes so surprised. Oh, I never thought of it that way. Well, yes, that's the problem of our society. We got trained to not think this way. I think in the old, and this is going to go over to what I want to talk with you next, because I think in the old days, we were more still in the know how these things are connected, and then not to bash science, but then kind of science came in, and then everything that wasn't scientifically proven, and you can't, or we cannot, or could for a long time not prove chakras or how everything is connected, then it was just put into the corner of woo-woo, but anything, some people say, when I can't see it, then it can't be real. Well, you can't see, if you love your spouse, you can't see the love either, but it's still there.
Right.
And so where I want to go with, I read too that you wanted to become an elder at age 36, and you were on this process of, and I read, I think it was on your Instagram, that you now slowly feel like you're becoming an elder. That was a long journey. But what I wanted to ask you about is, was in that process, you learned more about how we were in the old days more connected with our body to the environment, with our thoughts and the environment, with our emotions and the thoughts and the body and the environment, all these things. Did that help?
Yes.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
That's a good big question and a long answer.
Go ahead.
When I was in my 30s, I met an African shaman. So I met this man who was very interested in the chakra system in a very different way than I did. What happened was I showed up to one of his lectures. My first husband and my mother decided to go to this lecture, and they dragged me along. And the very first thing he said is, I can read auras and chakras. And I'm like, whoa, that's someone else who does what I do. And then he said, I didn't study in college because I could read the answers in my teacher's chakras and auras. And I was like, I got to study with this guy. Turns out he's an African shaman from Burkina Faso who grew up in the bush in a tribe in Africa where they live in indigenous ways, very connected to, like you said, the environment, very connected to the laws of nature. And so I spent 6 years studying with him where he immersed me in the laws of nature. Spent 6 years where he took me into the soil and the earth and understanding how earth is part of who we are, how water is part of who we are, all the natural elements, and engaged with all that. And what I came to understand is for every chakra, there is also a symbolic element of nature. So going back to the sacral chakra is holding on and letting go. The sacral chakra is water. Because it is about the flow of life and the flow of things. Things come and go, just like water has this water cycle of it evaporates, it gathers into a cloud, it rains, it accumulates into a lake or an ocean, and then it evaporates. It's a whole flow cycle. And so I learned with him for several years, and then he invited me. He watched all his students, and he was doing an elder initiation in the same way that his tribe did, just for everyone in his tribe. He invited certain white Americans to be part of this process. And I was the youngest. I was 36, and I was the youngest female of the tribe to ever go through these initiatory rites. And even though it was a month-long process with him, where we spent a whole month in the woods living according to the ways that his tribe would have us live and doing these deep shamanic rituals, it started an intense, I would say, 10-year process of me really evolving in my life into eldership. And most, I think, as I studied this and studied what eldership means in other cultures and what eldership means in our culture, and just the concept of eldership, I think all modern people hit some stage of eldership through the natural life cycle. For women, it's very common to be through menopause. Well, if you look at menopause, it's usually about a 10-year process. The first onset of symptoms until you finish the full set of symptoms and you are completely done with the menopausal stages, it's about 10 years. Well, that's about what I went through from 36 to about 46, 47. And that was a whole 10-year process of upgrading my chakra system in very intense ways. And I just recently turned 50, which is more acceptable an elder age in our culture. So when I turned 50, I could say, okay, now I'm an elder, even though I was at 36 in the shamanic indigenous woo-woo way. Now, as I'm in that stage of perimenopause and people see wrinkles and a little bit of gray hair, they can believe me as an elder. And I've already completed the 10 years of the spiritual, emotional, mental, not quite physical, but more of all those other aspects of my life are eldership.
But I think this is also, again, maybe a misconception of the sometimes ignorant society that you have to be old. And I agree, some life experience help, but Buddhism comes to my mind, where they actually take little kids and say, this is the next Dalai Lama, right? He's 4 years old, and we see it already. He is at 4 years old already an elder. The other thing that came to my mind is, from our physical and just worldly perspective, we, as not just women, in general, humans, enter the third stage of our life, which you could call elder, when we have our second Saturn return, which comes from astrology, and the Saturn return every 29 and a half years, or sometimes it's 29, it depends a bit. It's not mathematics. It is, but
it's astrology.
It's not always exact. So about that 29, 30, you have the first major life transition, to get back to life transitions, where you become from a young person to an adult, a real adult.
Right.
And then the second one is around between 58 and 60. And this is then the second Saturn return, and then you become definitely an elder, also by by age and whatever. So
right.
It's really interesting, because it was interesting to read about how you became an elder, and you say in one of your posts, you say too, when I became an elder, my relationship to finances and material stuff, this was kind of like ding ding, material stuff changed as I was thinking about downsizing so I can manage less. And this is also what a lot of people forget. The more stuff you have, the more stuff you have to manage. And they always say, like, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm like, yeah, then just let go of some stuff. So tell us, just because this is a podcast about how to change the relationship with our stuff and downsizing, and I actually also bring finances in it. So what did you do practically? Did you declutter your life, like out of physical things, or?
I'm going to get a little psychic woo-woo here. in the initiation process with my shaman teacher, that month-long initiative, all the rites he did for us, there were 13 of us that he put this through.
Mm-hmm.
And all of us had, like I said, the major upgrade of our systems,
Mm-hmm.
in that we had major life changes in probably 4 out of 5 major areas of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's like whatever he did in those rituals caused everything else in our worlds to
Mm-hmm.
go crazy for a while.
Yeah.
So, like, of those 13, a couple actually died, but they were also in their 80s already. But many of them lost their partners, their romantic or spouse partners. Many of them lost their homes or their careers, those kinds of major shifts.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I lost my spouse and I lost my home and my career all took a dive, all within a couple of months.
Talk about an
And
upgrade, huh?
it's like, whoa, like he'd warned us. He's like, you're taking the blue pill.
Mm-hmm.
You're not staying in the matrix. You are taking the blue pill where you're going to see life is going to shake up.
Mm-hmm.
And so my husband at that time actually got somewhat abusive and I had to leave. And I had to leave in terms of packing up my car and going.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't make enough money to get myself a new place. So I lived out of my car.
Mm-hmm.
And so I lost both my husband and my home.
Mm-hmm.
And in losing my husband and my home, I lost a lot of my stuff. I had
Yeah.
to learn how to live out of a car.
Yeah.
And in that process, I didn't just learn how to live out of a car, I learned how to not be attached to stuff. Because
Yes.
there's nothing like not being attached to stuff when you can't fit it in a car.
Yeah.
I had to decide this doesn't fit. What was important? It was me and my dog and some clothes
Yeah.
and the dog food,
And it's it's so hard because you're forced then in a situation like this. And it's interesting because I know of someone who had to leave her home because it was flooded. Everything was not flooded
Right.
like in like some from the outside. It was some pipe burst and everything was underwater. And I think it was sewer water, so it was not very lovely.
Oh.
So you couldn't even dry the stuff and keep it again. So she lost that way everything. And she said the same thing. I just learned to move on. And it's so interesting because so many people cling to their stuff, but actually when you could let it go, like especially stuff that you really don't use, don't like, and whatever, and is from your past, you could let go and get to a upgrade in your chakra system without having to go through the trauma of losing everything, which is really, really hard, I would imagine. And
You can, and
freeing too, but
it's freeing. And I don't think I would have reached the level of non-attachment that I have now if I hadn't gone through that. There is a freedom that came from, I didn't have a choice to go back.
Yes.
And I think that happens to people on some level in major life things that occur, that this is happening to me and I can't do anything about it, so I have to adjust.
Yes.
But if you're choosing it and you can go back, you're not likely to really make that shift.
Yes.
And I did choose to become an elder, but I didn't choose for my husband to leave me and
Yeah,
kick me out of the
no.
house. But my shaman teacher told me this could happen.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm all in. I don't care what happens. I want this.
Yeah. But still, I would think so, because I noticed too, it's like a lot of the generations that went through war and they lost maybe their everything or they had nothing, and they often cling to stuff. So I think you have two ways to go after a traumatic event like this. You either become even more a clinger, or you are really not attached to your things afterwards.
Right.
Maybe the reason why you are not a more a clinger now, because you lost already once everything, so now you need to cling on to everything, was because you were in a process of also being guided by somebody,
Right.
and you were in a conscious process. It was not just, you were not just like living your life oblivious to anything, how everything is connected.
Ding, ding,
and
ding,
then
ding,
all
ding.
of a sudden this happens and your reaction is, oh my God, now I have to cling even more.
Exactly. I made the choice and I had a mentor to walk me through it.
Yes.
And I consciously knew as it was happening, oh, this is part of that process.
Yes.
So I was very mindful of the spiritual evolution I was going through. Now
Mhm.
let's look back at my grandmother. Her
Yeah.
husband died. She had no choice about that.
Yeah.
And she did not make a spiritual conscious choice to evolve from that. She
Exactly.
actually clung more.
Mhm.
She lost the one thing that was the supporter of her life, and she clung more to everything.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that resulted in bowel obstruction.
Yeah.
Now, we have no idea how we're going to die. I don't know what's going to happen in my
No.
future, but right now I know. And what's interesting is I now live in a 3-bedroom house that I own. I have more stuff
Mhm.
and I am not attached to that stuff.
Mhm.
I'm happy it's here. I enjoy it. And if the house were to go up in a fire tomorrow, I could figure it out.
Mhm.
I could
Mhm.
be okay.
Mhm.
And I think that's exactly what you were saying, Connie, is that it's about being mindful. It's about choosing the spiritual evolution
Yeah.
in your heart and your soul. And even though it's hard, this major hard life experience, you've got to shut down that computer system, reset it, and let it reload.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it'll get too cluttered
Yeah.
and
And
sluggish.
And I think it's also important what you tell yourself then, because you just said something. You said I had a mentor, I had a guide, and I knew this was part of the process. So then you can intel, like as hard as it probably was, you can at least say, okay, this is part of the process. Nothing went wrong. What other people tell themselves then is, oh, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is shouldn't happen this way. And the more we say that, the more our subconscious probably starts to freeze or to get tense. I'm
Right.
somebody who gets tense very easy, so I always right away know, okay, something is going wrong in my thinking because I'm getting tense. And so I wanna go back to what you said earlier about the because you said to me the best way you know how to declutter your mind is through breathing, and you talked about your MOZI technique and about the affirmations and how words are important. So I don't know whether you want to say a little bit more to that, because this is what came to my mind. If you know it's part of the process, you can always say, yes, it's not supposed to be easy. This is part of the process. Nothing went wrong. Not making the outside events easier, but it makes it easier for yourself because you're not telling yourself on top of it all this stuff that weighs you
Yeah.
down and tenses you up, right?
Yeah. My shaman teacher, his name was Malidoma Somé, and he died a couple of years ago. But he used to say, and this was a line from his tribe, there is no right or wrong, only right
Mm-hmm.
or left. Do you want
Yes.
right or do you want left?
Yes.
You choose your path. It's like those memes going around, choose your hard. Marriage is hard, divorce is hard, choose your
Yeah.
hard.
Choose your heart. I
And
love that
the
because,
hard then is the evolution.
yeah, because it also is like, so I study astrology for so many years, and there's some people that say, oh, is this a good sign or is that a bad sign? Like a sun sign or whatever. And just yesterday, somebody in a group said, oh, is it bad when the sun squares Pluto or whatever? You don't need to understand astrology at all. I just want to say there is no good or bad. It just there is. And some things
Right.
are more challenging and other things are a little bit easier, but that doesn't make them good or bad. And the interesting thing is too, is like if you have it too easy, what everybody wants to be too easy, you're not evolving in your life, right? And this is,
Right.
I think, too, why in initiations you go through challenges. Not everybody has to go through something like you did, but any initiation that or any test that we're getting is not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be challenging, right? And so if we can come away from this, oh, this is bad, to, oh, this is challenging, I think this is already an
Right.
elevation of thinking compared to
Right.
good and bad. Yeah.
So going back to the MOZI method, which is
Mm-hmm.
how I work with my clients, and it's obvious now what I do is I'm an elder who helps people through their major life crises
Yes.
to
Yes.
upgrade their systems rather than submit to more clutter in their lives.
Yeah.
And I created the MOZI method as the way I walk my clients through this because I can't take people through the deep rituals that my shaman did. It's
Mm-hmm.
not feasible. It's
Mm-hmm.
not practical, and I can't reach as many people as I'd like to. But the MOZI method is a mind, body, spirit approach, which we've talked about that. You can shake your body to let go of stuff. You can say the clear, specific affirmation about releasing and what you want to receive as a result, or you can breathe. Well, the mind is the affirmation, the intention. The shaking your body is the body or the physical action, and the breath is the spirit. And when you put all three of those together, mind, body, spirit, three active things you do at the same time, it only takes 30 seconds, maybe even 10 seconds to shake and think and breathe. For 5 deep breaths, it's 30 seconds. But in that 30 seconds, you're retuning, you're realigning, you're smoothing and changing how your nervous system works. And the way that our nervous system and our brain functions best is not by a major shift, like I went through in the initiation, and then having to adjust to all that. The best way to train your nervous system into a new way of being is with little tiny habits that you do all the time to make it your norm.
Yeah.
And so I teach people these MOZI method exercises, one for each 7 chakra, one for each of the 7 chakras. And then I also give specific personalized ones to whatever major life issue they're dealing with. And I help them fine tune those affirmations.
Yeah.
But giving them those exercises of do this body action, shake to let it go, say this thought in your head or say it out loud as you do these very specific 3 deep breaths, because the breath changes everything instantaneously.
Yeah.
And one of the things I was thinking about before coming on your podcast today was the concept, how many people take 10 deep conscious breaths 10 times a day?
Yeah.
If people did that, I mean, I'm not even good at that, and I'm teaching it. You know,
Yes.
I do probably at least 5 times a day stop and do 10 deep breaths as part of my normal life. And that is what got me through the worst of, I lost my husband, I lost my home, I lost my career, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
It was doing those little things all day long and then just making that part of my normal life.
Exactly. That's why I say a few minutes a day keeps the chaos away. It works in so many different areas, not just with clutter. It works with, well, to me, again, clutter is so much more than just the physical things. It also brings you to the now, right? So many people are always saying like, oh, time flies and this and that. And if you're actually sitting just 30 seconds sitting here and are breathing consciously, you're actually in the now. And the more you do that during the day, that doesn't cost you down. You can still be productive. You can still serve your clients. You can still do all the things that you want to do. But you have these little launch pads or little check-in moments with you where you are actually in the now. And so I love that,
And
what you're saying.
when you do them, they make you more productive and more efficient
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yes.
If you don't do them, things pile up and it's harder for you to organize and weed through all that stuff. But if you stop, clear the clutter by breathing.
Yeah.
And it's this simple. The reason we need that is breathing in the periodic table of elements, back to science, oxygen is a large atom. It's very, very large. And so when you breathe in a way that clears most of the other stuff off of your air and you get more oxygen than you do other stuff, that oxygen going into your lungs goes into your bloodstream, goes into your nervous system, and it's so big, it says, I don't have room for this other crap, and it pushes the other crap out.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love
And it
that. That's
decides, it's like the oxygen
visual.
is so smart, it decides this is important to stay, but you got to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what it does is oxygen is also the stickiest. So it likes to attract to other molecules and other atoms. So it says, oh, I'm huge. You don't belong here. So I'm going to take you out of here. I'm going to attach you to me and go put you somewhere else. So breathing is so vital because it literally changes our chemistry on the molecular cellular level.
And the sad part is we have to tell this to people that breathing is important, even though we all know if we stop breathing for, let's say, 3 minutes, we're no more, right? So
right.
Yeah.
I actually, today a friend of mine sent me Facebook message. She said, "Oh, you'll love this." And it was a 2-minute video. The caption just said, "Take 2 minutes and look at the sunflowers."
Mm-hmm.
And it was a 2-minute video of sunflowers in South Dakota with the natural sounds of the crickets and the wind,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and zooming into the little bugs and zooming into the squirrels and the birds eating the flowers. And I just sat there for 2 minutes and did 20 deep breaths.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everything from else in the day just went away for that 2 minutes. And then the time after that, everything I was doing became easier.
Yeah, I bet. Teri, I could talk with you forever, but we have to be a little bit mindful of maybe we do a part
time.
2 sometime in the future. But so I will link all the, like your website and everything in the show notes, but you have a preferred way or preferred, how do you say that? I started the sentence wrong. Where should we send the listeners if they're interested? Where would you want me to send them? What is like?
My homepage is the best,
Okay.
terileigh.com.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yes. Or you could do chakrascoach.com. It goes to the same place.
Okay, I will put that in the show notes. Now, last question. Back to the chakras. I read that you said you have a dominant throat chakra and you have a lot to say. So, what is the question I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about? You have 5 more minutes to talk about that.
Oh, I think you got it all. Not
Did
all.
I?
I mean, we could
Okay.
talk for hours, but
Yeah.
I mean, I can teach and teach and teach for hours, but what I do best in my teaching is I receive, so I listen.
Yeah.
And then as I listen, I hear what you need, and then I know how to communicate back.
Yeah.
And that's actually a natural way of communicating. So I
Yes.
can't think of a question you didn't ask, because we had just a beautiful, delightful, intelligent and meaty and esoteric and everything conversation. I really enjoyed talking with you today, Connie.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Teri. And like I said, I really enjoyed it. I'm actually feeling sad to have to start winding down, but we might do a second part. I really love what you're doing. It fits like a glove to what I'm talking, and you just come from a different angle and saying basically the same things. So
yeah,
I love it.
We could probably do a second episode on dominant chakras and how they work with and against our lives.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's keep that on the running list.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Teri, for your time.
I appreciate you, Connie.